Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Kep, co-founder of From Day One, our forum on corporate values. Welcome to today's webinar. We're excited about this topic, which is looking into how employers can support, retain, and advance women in their ranks after the pandemic's disproportionately negative impact on women's careers. But before we get started, I want to share something we have for today's attendees, something special. One of our monthly virtual conferences is coming up on next Wednesday, April 6th, and its title is Managing the Human Impact of Digital Transformation. It's going to be really valuable for employers who are transitioning to new digital tools and monitoring the various and influential impact of this change on their employees. Thanks to our partners, including today's sponsor, we have some complimentary VIP tickets available for those who joined today's webinar, and that's you. I'm putting a link in the chat space right now where you can take advantage of this. The regular price for our conference tickets is $149, and this link will give you a free VIP ticket for the whole day's activities. Today, we'll be exploring the topic of ensuring women's career growth in the new work environment. Corporations across America lost millions of women leaders and potential leaders during the disruption of the last 2 years. So how can employers respond by creating a culture of intentional balance and inclusivity? What new lessons have been learned about what women need to support the many roles they play at both work and home, as well as the life stages they navigate? Our sponsor today is Ovia Health. I'll tell you a bit about them. Ovia Health is a leading women's and family health technology company with over 15 million members. In this webinar, we'll explore how employers can leverage a once in 100 years type of public health crisis to drive positive change and health outcomes for working parents. Now, a few quick logistical items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and it'll be available to you on demand soon after the event. So you can look out for an email in about 24 hours that'll have that link. That email will also have information on how you can get professional development credits for this session from both the Society of Human Resource Management and HR Certification Institute. And you can look out for a written account of this conversation on our website at fromday1.co. Now, for you participants, about 45 minutes into the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session. You can submit your questions anytime they occur to you using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Emily McCrary Ruiz Esparza. Emily is a freelance reporter based in Richmond, Virginia, who writes about workplace culture and policies, hiring, DEI, and issues faced by women. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, Fast Company, and Food Technology, among others, and has been syndicated by MSN and The Motley Fool. Okay, Emily, take it away.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to those of you who are on the West Coast. I'm really happy to be here with all of you women today to hear just what you've been seeing over the last 2 years and how you're contributing and how employers can do better. As all of you are aware, and everyone also who is in our audience, in many ways, the pandemic has really damaged women's careers. I'm quoting from a recent Harvard Business Review article. Many of you don't know these numbers. In the first year of the pandemic, 54 million women left the workforce globally. 90% of those have not come back. The participation rate for women in the global workforce is now under 47%, and for men, it's 72%, so it's much, much lower. But women are often better leaders than their male counterparts, so it's important that we keep women in power in our workplaces. And this is not just for their sake, it's for the sake of overall business in the United States and globally as well. A multi-year study from Potential Project found that women versus male leaders are able to do hard things in a more human way. So let's talk about ways that we can keep women in powerful positions in our businesses. I'd like to start by having all of our panelists introduce themselves, and then I'd like for you to answer this question along with your introduction. What has made it possible for you to achieve your position in leadership? I'd like a personal answer, just brief. Maybe the first thing that comes to mind. We'll start with Robin.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks for having me today. I know the question you asked me, but I just can't help but back up to what your initial comment was, that saying that women can do hard things. That's actually something I'm very intentional about with my daughter all the time, is that you can do hard things. And I think that someone said that to me one time, and I think I need a daily reminder because some things are really hard. So I love that you said that. But I was really, really fortunate early in my parenting journey to have some mentors and women mentors to go before me who really encouraged me to be who I needed to be as a parent and who I needed to be as an employee. And they did that not only with their words, but by setting a great example. So that was huge for me.
Ebony, if you would introduce yourself and let us know what's made it possible for you to be where you are.
Thank you. Really excited to be here with all of you. So Ebony Travis, Boston Scientific. And, for me, surrounding myself with good people, good role models, starting with my mom, and I'm even going to include my husband in on that. And then so many of the phenomenal leaders that I work with, because starting as an admin and working my way up to a director of global HR and EEO policy programs and training, I'm going to tell you, that wasn't an easy feat. I've been here for 25 years at Boston Scientific. So I think a lot of it is, I know the energy, and I like that energy to be something that it motivates me and gets me going. I'm a happy, hyperactive person, and I have goals. And I believe that surrounding myself with those people that have pushed me and helped me has gotten me where I'm at today. And I couldn't be more proud.
Thank you. Shauna?
Hi, I am Donna Carter. I'm from Catalent. I am the Diversity and Inclusion Director here, and Ebony's energy is definitely contagious. I would say similar. I've had great people in my life. I remember my career started in HR, and I still remember her name, Christine Smith, who was a practice administrator. I was an appointment secretary, and she saw something in me that I did not see in myself, and started me on my HR career. And I would say that, it was surrounding yourself around people who are going to encourage you and help you and tell you the truth, regardless of whether it's easy or not, has been several things that have led me to the success that I have today. And I cannot be more thankful for each of those people throughout the different steps and stages in my career. And I am so happy to be here.
Thanks, Donna. Shauna at Ovia.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us and joining us today. I'm Shauna. I lead our employer sales team at Ovia Health. And for me, I would say, similar to what a lot of the ladies have said, definitely some strong female role models. And, but also, I've spent most of my career really in technology. So I've worked largely with men for the most part, and some incredible, amazing men, but also some good examples of what I don't want to be, which I would say has been as powerful and taught me as many lessons around things that I thought or were trained were weaknesses, like emotional intelligence and empathy and sensitivity, realizing actually they're viewed as weaknesses by people that don't know how to do them. And so realizing those are actually superpowers, and just believing in myself and staying true to my values.
I think that's a really good point, Shauna. Sarah, last but not least.
Thank you. Sarah Waltman, Vice President of Talent Management at Dentsply Sirona. I got hit with a 1-2 punch during the pandemic where I actually was diagnosed with progressive multiple sclerosis, and it made me take a great reset. And I realized over the years I had attempted to push myself into a mold, and I did very well, but I was really unhappy, and sometimes resentful of having to be less of a mother and more of a hard worker, or give less to myself health-wise and put more into work. And so I've decided to blow up with traditional means. And I like that I can do hard things. I can do hard things my way, and it still works. And so that's really been my mission coming out of, still being in, but coming out of the pandemic is, why don't we just get wildly curious about helping everybody do their best work the way they need to? Why does everybody have to fit a mold? And so that's kind of really charged me going forward. And I love that everyone can contribute their best if they're set up to do so. And we don't have to have a mold.
Everything you guys have said, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, yes, I have experienced that. Someone telling me that emotional intelligence is a weakness, even if it's not in those words, characteristics that are traditionally developed by women in Western culture, they're often seen as lesser than, or just having someone say, hey, I don't even know if you realize this, but you're really good at XYZ. All of those things have just been really possible, even for making my career happen too. Okay, so Ebony, I want to start with you. You compile a lot of data around EEO in your job, compliance, and you do diversity reporting. So I'd like to get a sense from you what the current state of women's career growth and their place in the American workforce is right now. How well are employers doing, do you think?
Well, and so this is going to be more of you did some research because, with the pandemic and everything that happened, full transparency, our OFCCP was a little bit behind in how we filed our reports and when they were due, et cetera, for those that are familiar with the EEO reports and things like that. So what I can say, let me start with our organization. With our organization at Boston Scientific, we are doing all the right things. We are seeing a difference year over year where we're increasing women in leadership. Making sure that our pipeline starting at the bottom is giving opportunities for those to get into those leadership roles. And I can see that in our EEO reporting. And now when I talk about, the external environment, I can't sit here and tell you factually that every company is doing okay or that every company is doing poorly. What I can say from the research that was done is that we are making some differences. McKinsey has done a lot of research over these past couple of years, recent years. I'm not a fan of going back to 2016 or 2017. I'm really a fan of what's happening now and today. And what they're finding today is that we are making some strides. Now, granted, the retention, women are getting tired, right? Women and men. But women, they're carrying a lot of burden. They're being, parents, they're being wives, they're being, daughters, but they're also being caregivers, not just to their family, but to their mothers, their parents. And I share that because that's happening with me. I've been a full-time caregiver for 10 years to my mom, and every year it gets harder. When I say harder, it gets harder. And therefore, what we're seeing is a lot of women are taking steps back or they're stepping away from their careers to go focus more on that life because life happens before work. So what I can actually say is, yes, there's been improvements. Could we do better? You're darn right we could do better. We've got a lot of strides to make, but are we making them and are we doing that together? We are, but let's just not take our foot off the gas.
Don't get too comfortable yet. Let's talk about some of those things that we could be doing better. So the workplace has undergone many changes that are making it more possible. Let's say for women who are parents, flexible work schedules, remote work, it's just making it more possible, but the problem has not been solved. Childcare stipends, more inclusive work environments, more women in leadership. And the headline of a recent Washington Post article is that younger women now earn as much or more than men in 22 metro areas. So we are seeing a little bit more progress in terms of pay equity. Shauna, why is this still a problem? I think about a year ago, I think the last number I saw is that we still have about 100 years to close the overall gender pay gap. And that's just in the United States. Globally, it's much, much wider and it will take a lot longer. Why is this going so slowly, you think?
Yeah, to your point, I think we're trying to fix the damage of all of history, right? And that takes so much time. And so while we're seeing in younger generations, right, each generation gets better and smarter if things are going well, right? And that should be the way we evolve as a world. And so we're seeing things like people starting to understand why DEI matters, right? It's not just an initiative you should have your CEO sign declaring that they're going to, live by DEI standards. People are, sorry, garbage day and my 30-pound Labradoodle is protecting my honor. So, thinking about those things that really matter in terms of, if you think differently, if you have people that think differently, you only broaden your horizons, you broaden what you think about in terms of business. And understanding, I know my experience with when I was working for an employer, when I had all of my babies that gave me 20 weeks leave, the goodwill and the just allegiance that I felt to that company was so huge. But the truth is that culturally, you have to be changing your organization. You could have every policy in the world in place, but if you're not training managers and leaders on how to be better, how to actually be more inclusive, then nothing else matters, right? And while we're seeing differences in younger generations, the truth is, from a leadership standpoint, it's still older generations, right? 40s, 50s, 60s. And trying to change mentalities there, it takes a long time. So we've made progress, but to Ebony's point, man, we've got a long way to go.
It's those softer policies that are harder to implement because it requires people to change the way they behave, even the way they think about other people, which I've never been able to change.
Right. It's hard to do, right?
If anybody has tips, please let me know. What else is holding us back? Ebony, you mentioned some things. If you want to jump in on this, or Robin, Donna, Sarah, anybody, what are some things that might be holding the workforce writ large back when it comes to moving forward? Donna?
Well, I agree with both Ebony and Shauna. And I do think that we have made some strides. However, I think that this work, this whole D&I work is not just, it's not similar to other maybe change management functions that we've had. There has to be the ability to have those difficult conversations and provide that safe environment for your employees. And not just those employees, women or people who are marginalized, but the majority too. I have talked to a lot of white males in my organization who are leaders, who are afraid that they don't really know what to say, or they're not sure if they should join this conversation. And then some of them are afraid of losing some of their privilege, right? And so how do we have those conversations within the workplace? That is something that I think we miss sometimes, right? Because those are the people in leadership. How do we teach them how to use their power to help this cause? And I think that's a miss sometimes, and a gap that we need to try to bridge better.
And can I add to that, Emily? I love what Donna said. And, the DEI work is not easy. And it's not similar to a lot of other programs or initiatives or things that happen. And DEI is not a check the box, and it's not an initiative. DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we all have a role to play. And I love the fact that you talked about those difficult conversations and, the many conversations you've had with your white leaders, whether they be male or female. And sometimes, and I've led a lot of conversations like that in our organization when the murder of George Floyd happened and we were shut down for COVID. And that was a really hard process to go through. And what I learned through it, and what really made me vulnerable and comfortable in doing it, is that we have to be uncomfortable, right, to get comfortable. And a lot of times people just want you to listen. They just want you to hear them. And a lot of the connect the points, the points that can bring people together to make the conversation safe and really true and authentic is when people learn something about someone that they never would have expected. Like when I say I am a Black Hispanic woman, you see Black, but I am Black Hispanic. My mother is Hispanic, and I am married to a Caucasian man, and we could not be more opposite than ever before. But it's the love that keeps us together. And when people learn that, some things about you that they wouldn't expect to learn, it is amazing the conversations that can have. And that fear of losing the privilege, some people finally realize I'm not losing it. I'm actually just recognizing I can use it to help flip that script. So Donna, thank you. I love that you shared some of that. Thank you.
I want to talk about women as caregivers. So while we've certainly seen more men step into caregiving roles, even before the pandemic, and certainly since the pandemic, share in caregiving roles, And I'm talking about parents, but I'm also talking about workers who care for maybe a spouse, maybe a parent, older family member. I think we tend to underserve this population, which is, I say population, it's most people who are caring for someone else. Sarah, you mentioned being a mom. Is that right?
That's correct.
So what do you think about, do you think the workplace has become a safer, more supportive environment for women who are caregivers? And how do you think employers can improve in terms of talent attraction and retention?
Yeah, I think in pockets, but not consistently. And I think even within one organization, someone's experience can be vastly different. And it took many years because and the combination of COVID changing work rules for me to realize that it's something I just had to demand and be confident enough in what I offer skill-wise that what I needed to do as a mother could come with that. I'm a package. But I have to be candid. The first 8-9 years of my son's life were really hard for me. He was in a daycare from dawn to, early in the morning to late at night. And I was the one who was hoping I wouldn't have to pay the fine for letting him stay over the 5:30 mark and the stress to rush in traffic, and felt like I didn't get the best of him because fellow mothers will know that something happens bad between when they get done with their day and bath time, and it's not the most pleasant. And I really resented that period of my life. I wanted deeply to be a stay-at-home parent, and it just wasn't possible financially. And something clicked for me, and I realized, you know what, I have to advocate for myself. I have to advocate for the kind of life that I want that brings me joy. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. And when I did it, I started realizing more people around me started doing it. And some of the things I never thought would have been normal, like coming in a little bit later or leaving early when I went to without guilt, nobody was questioning. So I think it is in pockets. I would really advocate for people to be confident and lean into what they need for themselves, for their life, what brings them joy. And if a company cannot work with that, move on. I think one great thing about right now is there's lots of other companies that are waiting for you.
I love that, Sarah. And the thing is too, particularly in the job market right now, I mean, you have the option to really powerfully advocate for yourself. I had that same experience. I can so relate, feeling like I would see my kids for an hour at night, and then was fortunate that at the time I was working at Microsoft, they launched their first flexible work arrangement program ever. And I was the guinea pig. And then from there, once I experienced that, I mean, it was life-changing from week one. So every job after that, I advocated for, hey, I want to drop my kids off at school. I want to pick them up at a reasonable hour. I want to be there when they get home. And so when anybody comes to me and asks me for that type of schedule, like, it changed my life. So I would never say no to somebody that needs that, because it just makes them better, right? Like, moms know better than anyone how to multitask, like nobody's
Absolutely.
business. And so it is on us to make sure we're successful in managing those types of arrangements.
I've never done that for someone in my group who hasn't been one of my top performers. There is no less work. They get done, they become more efficient. The work that they get done is top quality. When they do have to lean in more to work, they don't mind, because we'll give them the flexibility when they need to do something. I have never seen that go wrong.
Well, and if I can just add to that, I think from a retention perspective, like, employers are asking all the time, how do we keep our best people? And I think caregivers and parents, whether you're, I'm caring for 2 wonderful little children, but Ebony, I know you're caring for your parents, and we're, to your point, Emily, we're caring for a lot of people. And most people go through a season of their life where they're pulled in multiple directions. So you give that employee the flexibility and the safe space to ask for it. You have leaders, Sarah, you were so brave to ask for it. But I think when there are leaders that employees have to look at, as a mentor, who have done that, who have gone before them, you really are going to retain those people. They will appreciate that kind of flexibility and be much more likely to stay.
Absolutely.
Shauna, you work with a number of employers. That's Ovia's role. So what kind of trends are you seeing in better care for women who are caregivers?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, we work across the gamut. So we work with women who are, in early stages of, even trying not to get pregnant, managing their cycles and all of that, through women trying to get pregnant, in the parenting stages. And we've even launched into menopause now. And we're just helping people understand all different levels of care, right? Giving them resources, both to understand just what's available to them from their employer, but also connecting with other people like them in their life stages, routing them to the resources to help and support them. And it's incredible because we see, with our clients across our book of business that we've got a 92% return to work rate after leave, which, if you heard Steve's numbers up front is pretty incredible. And that's something too, it's so huge right now for employers to be making sure that they are doing a great job of helping people understand what it will look like when they return to work, right? And what those benefits are, because 75% of women make the decision about whether they're coming back to work or not before they've left to have their baby. And so if they don't understand that somehow I'm going to magically, smash together this incredibly full life of now being a mother with this, what was already an incredibly, full and often stressful life of being a full-time worker, you've got to help them feel like you're going to be there to support them and have those resources in place. For instance, like Ovia, shameless plug, but that's what we do. That's why I came here, because I was missing that for so much of my career. And being a company where 75% women, we know and understand the level of caregiving and, to Ebony's point, that middle place that I'm now in. I wasn't when my kids were little, but man, that's a tough time to navigate.
Career development opportunities can often be hindered by the status of being a parent or being a caregiver, not necessarily because the woman is an underperformer, as we've seen, but because the employer limits their opportunities. So I want to move on to career development opportunities. These are things, you all work in really big companies. You have to administer these things in some way at a corporate level, but in order for them to be effective, they have to affect women very individually. So how do you think about, how do you do that? How do you provide something system-wide that works, and what have you learned along the way? I want to start with Sarah on this one.
Yeah, so I think a big part of some of this is a fear of losing a lot of control as an organization, leaders, and it's realizing that you've got to design programs that aren't centered around central control necessarily. And so things that you do have to be able to be customized throughout the organization, because everyone is unique. There is not a lot of one size fits all options any longer. People come in, they accelerate at different levels, they have different personal needs. So for us, a lot of the things that we're doing are more around helping the individual have the conversations with their manager, training the manager and the individual to both be able to offer something to development conversations, giving the individual, all individuals access to career development, coaching through our match systems so that they can look for people who can help them, and letting individuals really own their own journey. And that may look a lot different. And it doesn't always have to be the formal training programs. It can also be on the job training that you map out, or a mentoring relationship, or getting involved in some of our DE&I opportunities like employee resource groups and taking leadership roles there. All that though would be in vain if there isn't opportunities on the other side. So really then looking for different characteristics than just presence, or someone who is aggressive to say that they are ready for a promotion. So it's also looking at value add, both performance and potential, and really having a program that the individual drives.
Sponsorship and allyship are something that I think, tell me if I'm wrong, companies tend to struggle with. Sponsorship being a little bit more of a formal program, allyship a little bit less, allyship and mentorship, maybe not quite hard policies. Donna, how do you encourage this in an organization?
Well, fortunately, Catalent is really, really big on internal movement, internal promotion, and even some of the programs that Sarah mentioned, we have those in place. Things like bubble assignments where people can actually leave their current role and go get experience in another role. And we truly do believe in that internal development. We have been very intentional about making sure that women are getting those opportunities as well. And that is part of our DEI strategy, is to help bridge that gap with women in leadership. And so when I think about sponsorship, we have a program that we sponsor. And of course, we're in the pharmaceutical industry. So we have roles that would lend themselves more greatly to sponsorship, our scientists, things like that. And so we are very pro sponsorship. We're also very, very, very keen on making sure that our high potentials don't just have programs, but they also have opportunity for exposure. And that's where the allyship comes into place, right? So it's more than just being this ally where I'm going to post on LinkedIn that I'm an ally, or I'm going to post out there that, you know, oh yeah, Women's History Month, but it's about putting action behind that post, right? It's about when you're the only female in the room and they're speaking negatively about another female because maybe, you know, she got emotional. Are you going to be the one that says, wait a minute, this is why, and it's not necessarily emotion, but, you know, so forth. Are you going to be the one that advocates for that person when they're not in the room? And that's the significance. And I think as we're women in leadership, we have an obligation to help pull those other females up and to help lead them. And the other obligation I wanted to talk about is that if you are fortunate enough to have a female leader or even a male leader who's going to advocate for you and be an ally, it behooves you to listen, right? It behooves you to, you know, not only take their advice, but think on it, act on it, and not just let it go in one ear and out the other, right? You have an advantage that some people don't ever get. You know, some people don't ever have allies or advocates who will advocate for them. So if you're fortunate enough to be in that relationship, take advantage of it. And not only when they're saying the great things that, oh, you're a rock star, but when they're telling you that, oh, Donna, you said that in the wrong way, you know, well, then take it to heart. And so I think allyship and advocacy, that's what that's all about. It's about putting action behind your words. And then you have to get to know that person. You have to get to know that culture. There are some cultures that don't like to be in the front. You know, they don't like to speak out. So how can you then become that ally for them? Because sometimes that looks as though they're not good leaders. And that's not necessarily the case. So it's a whole bunch that goes into it, but there are things that each of us can do to become a better ally and a better advocate. And I'm fortunate to be in a company that really does look for internal growth, internal movement, which makes it easier. We have some work to do, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Do you believe in positive or negative reinforcements for allyship behavior in the workplace?
I guess I would answer that by saying I believe in telling the truth. So I wouldn't say I believe in positive or negative reinforcement, but I believe that if I do not tell that employee the truth because I don't want to have that difficult conversation or I don't want to, then I'm doing a disservice to that employee. And at that point, I'm more concerned about my level of comfort than I am about that person's growth. And so that's how I would respond to that question.
Robin, what's been your experience with mentorship, sponsorship, allyship? And they are very distinct things. I group them together only because they are very central to relationships in the workplace, and they make upward mobility possible for women. So what's been your experience there?
Yeah, I've worked for smaller companies for most of my career. And so I've come from a background with a little bit less structure and more of an informal mentorship. And so I'm very familiar with a culture and an organization that is generally supportive of mentorship and, certainly incents people and motivates people to spend that time out of their day to be a mentor and to other points made, listen to that advice. But I think that mentorship relationship, like others have said, is that it really takes someone kind of standing up and investing that time. That whether it's a formal structured program with kind of set metrics and how we're going to meet and what it's going to look like, or it's much more informal, that it's really ultimately down to that individual person, and that, they know how to be brave, they know how to give that direct and honest feedback. They're invested in pouring into the next generation of talent. And I think it's in that ways that we can equip our leaders and teach them, tools around communication and mentorship.
So let's keep talking about the internal mobility aspect of women's careers growing. How do you help women as early as entry level see themselves in the C-suite? Or Ebony, like your experience coming in, I think you said as an administrator, is that right? Can you talk about how you made that move as if you didn't spend 20 years working on this? I don't mean to reduce that.
No,
or ask you to
okay.
sum it up in a sentence.
No, I started when I was 13. So let me go with that. Kidding. But being with an organization for 25 years, it's been a great and positive journey. It's not always been easy, but I'm going to repeat something that Donna said, and I really appreciated her saying that because I felt the same way. And a connection to that was when she said, someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And it really hit home for me, Donna, because that's exactly what happened to me. And I think, Robin, you can appreciate that as well, right? Someone saw something in you as an admin, and I thought I'd be a career admin. My story's unique because this is my first corporate American job I've had. I thought I was going to be an all-star Dallas Cowboy cheerleader and a Miss Pageant girl, but I like to eat and I like to have fun, and I knew I needed to pay my bills. Therefore, starting here at this company allowed me the opportunity to decide what I wanted to do, to chart my own course. And I didn't know what that was ever going to be. And someone saw something in me. And therefore, I began to grow in my career. I even got my BA and MBA while working for this organization and working full time, using the tuition reimbursement program. And again, charting that course. But it took people encouraging me to say, there's something there. You just need to believe it. And so I share that story with many coming into the organization, and I share it externally with external groups I go and mentor, reminding them that if somebody sees something in you, pause and think about, what is it? And is it something that you truly have to dig deep and decide, is that what I want to do? Do I want something bigger and better than myself? Am I passionate about it? So everything I've ever had in my career, I've always been passionate about. And I always ask that of the individuals. If you're passionate and you wake up every day excited about the job that you're doing, guess what? That's what you need to be doing it. And that's what I do, is I wake up every single day loving it. I came from the admin to sales operations role, managing, went to compliance, policies, became a manager there. Took a step back and said, I want to go into DEI because my degree was in human resources. Got that degree, went into diversity, equity, and inclusion, did that for 4.5 years. So excited. We won the Catalyst Award. Yay. And then I moved in and got the promotion as a director of global HR policies. And here I am today. And when I share that story with other folks coming into the organization, they believe in themselves and they know they can do it. And 9 out of 10, they move faster than I do. They're ready for the next big thing. And they're doing it. They're excelling and more. So you got to make sure you share your story, and also remind them to be passionate about what they want to do. Because if you don't wake up excited about the day, you need to pause and think about that for a moment.
I want to remind everyone in our audience that we'll be taking audience questions here in about 5 minutes or so. If anyone wants to put those in the Q&A chat, we'll be looking at those shortly. I do want to address succession planning, women, how they can be involved and how they can benefit from this. Sarah, we'll start with you, and then I'd like to hear from Shauna.
Yeah, so we do a lot of things that are probably normal tools now that we do the diverse talent to watch. One thing that we added to it, which is kind of what we call a talent card. It looks like a baseball card for an individual to kind of present themselves. And it's kind of what they leave with the leadership team as they're having these talent related discussions. And we offer coaching around putting those together. And it's been really helpful for us to look at those because sometimes people are remembered by their presence and not necessarily their product or what they've delivered. You may not know everyone's background. Really like Ebony's, I actually started as a cashier at Lowe's. And didn't get my degree until 2015. So very, very similar, using the tuition reimbursement and holding my son at the same time. So yeah, I totally get it. And I think one thing that we also do in the succession is we do a lot of career related coaching. We utilize our employee resource groups, particularly what we call DS Women, to look for individuals who might be interested in, and not everybody is, but those who might be interested in pushing forward in their career. And we coach them through that. We probably even more than being a sponsor, we look at that everyone who can gets involved. HR, we have talent acquisition, we talk to their leader. And what we do is we set them up for what they're looking for. If they want to get to that director level, we coach them on, here's an open position. Let us help you practice for your interview. And we give them the competitive advantage going into the situations. And we make it a point to look for diverse individuals within the organization more than we look for external candidates. And we put a lot of effort into helping them prepare for what they want to do. And they always come to the top of the list. Oftentimes we didn't even realize that we, had that talent. Where has this person been? And they do a phenomenal job. So great opportunity for us is to take our succession planning to the next level, really seek out individuals who want to go to that next level and really help them with everything they would need to get there. And sometimes it's as administrative as they don't realize where do I find the internal job postings. A lot of employees don't have the time to sit by and watch, when positions are coming up. So making sure that we bring them to them. So just really great opportunity is to give them a complete sponsorship and help them to that next level.
Yeah, and I would add that, every manager should be having career growth conversations, right? With every person on your team. You should understand where they want to go, how you can develop them, and be working towards that with them. And it should never be about how do I just make you better in this role, right? And it shouldn't even be about how do I make you better at this company. It should be about how do I help you get to where you want to be, whether it's here or somewhere else, right? Because if you truly care about the person, then it's about them, right? And it's very self-serving of a manager if it's not. And so really ongoing conversations around that. And I'd say right now, I'm in a situation where I'm both proactively succession planning and reactively succession planning, which, the one thing about reactive succession planning, not that I'm promoting that, but at the same time, it does give you very clear visibility into what worked and what didn't work and where you need to go and where the very clear gaps are. So I would say across the board, no matter what level of leadership it is, right? The very top or your entry level people, you should always have a plan for what the opportunities are. I'm hiring some entry level folks right now, and it's very top of mind for me around, okay, it's a big jump from where they come in to potentially where they could go next. And so really thinking about how do we create a tier that even if it's like, promoting them to a manager or senior manager, whatever, as they go through that ladder, really making sure that they come in with a line of sight around growth opportunities.
Being able to see clearly, where you could possibly go is even a talent attractor too, to be able to show somebody this is what you could be doing in 5 years. Or even less. My last question before we go to the audience Q&A is how can employers make sure that women in their mid-career positions aren't feeling stagnant? I say mid-career because that tends to be caregiving years. So not only do women have more on their plate, but employers are thinking that they have more on their plate. They may sort of be in this forgotten strata in the workplace. Robin, what's your advice to employers and not letting those women be left behind?
Yeah. And as we all know, so many women during the last 2 years have made the intentional decision, it's not worth it. I'm leaving the workforce completely. And so whether it's, recent history or for years when women, are kind of opting out at the point child care responsibilities or other caregiving responsibilities become challenging, I think employers need to be very intentional about creating something exciting to stay for, something to come back for, that it's creating leadership opportunities, creating a very clear path on, where they are today and then what's coming in the future, and equipping them for that. Not just, hey, here's your potential, good luck, but professional development and coaching opportunities to help get them there. In addition, I think flexibility is key. So many of us have talked already today about flexibility and needing a way to create a different schedule and to have flexibility in your day or in your week. I think employers need to understand that that's a real push at that time of someone's career.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll jump into that because that's a great point, Robin, too, is thinking about all of the options that you should be exploring around the, women in that mid-career stage, caregiving, around flexible work arrangements, right? Returning to work at, a slower pace. We see with, higher health outcomes for moms and babies for every additional week of leave that a woman has. So really just thinking about how do you think outside the box of things historically that maybe weren't necessarily acceptable, but then there's so much data now showing that those flexible options are so powerful and so productive and effective.
Thanks. All right, let's move on to our Q&A. We've got so many, we won't be able to get to them all. So I apologize to everyone who's putting these really good questions in. So we're going to go through as quickly as possible. So I'm going to throw these questions out there, answer it, and we'll move on to the next. This is rapid fire. So do your organizations have dedicated re-entry support for women coming back to their companies or the workplace in general? Re-entry to me says you may be postpartum or post becoming a parent. So maybe those, but also just women coming back into the office in general, if you can maybe address those. Ebony, will you take this one on? I think you're on mute, or I'm
so sorry. Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Yes, no, it was me. That's a good one. I think it's a lot about the workplace has to be ready. We have to make sure that we're having the conversations. We're talking about, the supporting of our women, all of our employees, right? No matter what phase or how they're returning back to work, et cetera, we have to be willing to be flexible. We have to meet people where they're at. I think that the answer is simple. We have to meet people where they're at. If we want to retain, we want to create a culture of inclusion, of equity, we got to meet people where they're at. So we have to be willing to have conversations and be able to flex a little bit. That's rapid fire for you.
Thank you. Okay, next one. From Catherine Morgan, what would your advice be to an employee that is being told by management that they support growth and new opportunities, but the actions don't match the declaration? As if this has never happened before. I'm sure all of us have experienced this. Whoever wants to take this one on, please go for it.
Yeah, I can jump in on this one because I've been in that boat many times. It kind of depends on your personal situation, right? I think so many companies are in that boat now, right? Where they're trying to say the right things, have the right policies, but then their actions don't live up to that. And honestly, you'll be on a track for burnout if you're trying to just sustain that. If you are trying to live in an environment where they actually don't truly support you and have that culture. And in this job market, I tell you, and again, it depends on your situation, but there are so many companies right now that are living and breathing their values and actually walking the walk that, it's change takes a long, long time. And so to sit around and wait, you could be waiting a while.
Okay, in this similar vein, thank you, Shauna, by the way. Kate Kelleher says, I'm at an organization with an all-white male leadership team that does not seem interested in DEI and has left me, a female HR director, off of that team. What research would you say is helpful when looking for positions at other companies, or questions that are good to ask to ensure that a company will be a good fit when it comes to women in leadership and DEI? So this person is just one step ahead of the last. They've decided to leave. What should they be looking for?
I don't mind taking that one. I think you want to look for representation. So when you're looking at the company, do you see diverse representation you want to look at? And then if you have the opportunity to speak to someone who already works at that company, really do your research, right? And speak to someone who works there to see if they're truly engaged in DE&I efforts, or if it's just, a fad or something like that. So I think those are the two things I look at. If you're ever researching a company, you can go and look at their leadership and see if there's diversity amongst their leaderships, if they have ERGs existing, those types of things. And then the best resources, if you can find someone that works there to really tell you what's going on, that's a good resource as well.
Thanks, Donna. Are there forces of resistance or backlash that women run into, or is it mostly about the stubbornness of the status quo? So I think this person is like, Donna, your eyes just got really big.
I can take that one. I think it's the fear of losing control. The way the workforce was designed, post-industrial, is all about control. It's not much different than a daycare. I think if many of them could lock the doors and lock you in for a period of time, they probably would. And I think we took a sharp left during COVID, and it is hard for a lot of leaders to see that they won't, they'll still be able to, if not even better, operate when they allow adults to make the decisions of how, when, where they get their work done, and what gives the best output. And so I do think a lot of it is about that control and coaching leaders to understand, it's really, let's focus on performance. Let's focus on setting up people for the best. Let's not worry, if you give Sarah this adjusted schedule that, Jane is going to get jealous, and then you'll have to give everybody the schedule. Jane just wants you to ask her too what she needs. Everyone just wants to be treated like a human and understood that they have needs and they're all unique. And as long as it helps them get to their best work and both the organization and the individuals getting what they need, why not?
Thanks. The next question, advocating for yourself. What types of arrangements and policies should I be asking for? I have very young children, but I'm told I am a top performer. They constantly turn to me for special projects and insight, yet the balance is just not there. It seems I'm giving more than I'm gaining. So everyone here has experienced this, I am sure. Robin, what would you say to this person?
I mean, I think it's unique to each person. Sarah was just saying, you have to ask for what you need, and what I need and what Sarah needs and what others, it's going to vary. And what you might need at this point in time might be different in 6 months or in 6 years. And I think, we've talked about the competitive job market, and not that you want to leave, but I think a lot more people are feeling comfortable asking for what they need, and knowing that lots of other employers are possibly willing to offer that if their current employer can't. So it does take you willing to be a little bit brave. But as we said, we can do hard things.
Do you think this person can say, I need to take on less work?
I think so. I have a very good friend who is at the crossroads of, should I be honest with my manager and tell them that I can't keep this kind of workload, or do I just leave? And the worst, as an employer, as a manager, when you have an employee leave without raising their hand and asking for help, is heartbreaking. I only wish, someone had told me sooner kind of mentality. And so I've coached my friend of, you know, you need to tell them what it is you need. Ask for reasonable hours or schedule, push back on the workload, ask for more resources for your team. I mean, I think you don't get what you ask for, if what you don't ask for. And so you start with a question.
Thanks, Robin. The next question, what are the most typical microaggressions that make any woman reluctant to return to the office?
Okay, I'm going to take this one. There's a couple there, right? There's a couple. It's, you know, when you're a leader and you are in a meeting with all males and you're the one that's being asked to take the meeting notes. As a Black woman, it's when you present in large forums and you're told, wow, you're so articulate. I didn't know you could speak like that. Now, look, I appreciate it, but we got to change that. Okay. It's a better way to say that. And, you know, the other one being, you know, just the assumption that because of who you might be or look like, you're not maybe in that C-suite level or something along those lines, right? It's people seeing what they want to see versus actually, you know, seeing the whole picture. I could go on, but those are the things that I've faced. I'll let someone else take it.
I think one thing I want to add is a common one, assuming that because she has kids, she can't take the bigger project because she won't have time because she has children, even though the husband could work at the very same company and he has children too, but that's not a conversation around him.
All right, the next one is from Lori on the topic of sponsorship and allyship mentorship. How has your organization coached sponsees and mentees on salary negotiation? There seems to be a lot of conversation on if and how people talk about salary. Do you talk about salary? This may mean, do you personally talk about salary? Do you encourage people within your organizations to talk about salary?
I can take this.
Yeah.
I absolutely do. I think that there is this stigma, right, and historical just ties around women not necessarily asking what they want or what they deserve, and salary absolutely, I think, is at the top of that list. I had an experience as a hiring manager many years ago where I hired a man and a woman for the same job, pretty, you know, not entry level job, but newer, kind of a couple of years experience. And one negotiated far higher salary than the other one. And I had horrific guilt around this because I met both their demands, but the man had a much higher demand than she did. And after a few months, I had to go to her and say, listen, like this, I need to fix your salary. And I had this coaching conversation with her about, you can always ask. You can get pushback, they can say no, but what's the worst that's going to happen, right? And even to the person's point around, you know, needing more flexibility, always go ask. And I think that comes with age too. Like I've gotten a lot more, I think, sassy and feisty in my older age and will ask for anything, because the worst that's going to happen is somebody's going to say no. And with salary, like you have to be having those conversations with women, and women have to understand what their worth is and that you are most of the time worth way more than you think you are. You're on mute, Emily.
Thank you. Shauna, if you could, in 60 seconds, someone had a question about your menopause initiative, which is great. Just saying like, hey, we don't talk about this. You don't have to go into detail about the product necessarily, but maybe why no one's talking about this in the workplace yet. And we'll end on that one.
Yeah, 60 seconds. Okay. Well, anybody should go read this book called Unwell Women. If you haven't read it, it's all about the history of women and women's health and why it's taboo. Menopause, I mean, if you're not fertile as a woman, historically, you have no value. So of course, we're not talking about it in the workplace. So we're talking about it now, right? And personally, I'm not far from that stage of life. So I'm very invested in this whole perimenopause, menopause. It impacts work. It impacts effectiveness. It impacts relationships. It impacts everything for a woman in that age of, late 30s, it starts until at least mid 50s. It's a huge portion of the working population and a huge portion of your leadership female population. So that's where we're growing our menopause offering to really help women understand, right? Get educated about it. it. And because you never learn about it until you're in the thick of it, right? Get coaching on it, understand how to navigate career at that stage of life. And it's something we want to normalize, like so many other topics that have been taboo in the workplace because of women's lack of role in the workplace. We want to change all of that.
Thank you. I think that was a record number of questions we've been able to get through. So applause to you all. We are at time. So I want to thank all of our panelists, Ebony, Shauna, Robin, Donna, and Sarah. And I'm going to kick it back to Steve from Day One.
Thank you, Emily. And to all of you speakers, it was a really thoughtful and dynamic conversation right from the start when we learned about the hidden strengths and stories that each of you had. So thanks again to our sponsor, Ovia Health, and to all of you who participated today and asked so many questions. If you'd like to join us for more virtual events, you can head to our website at fromday1.co and check out more of our upcoming webinars. I'll name a couple of them. Tuesday, April 5th, we'll be talking about addressing power, privilege, and racial equity in your organization. Wednesday, April 6th is our monthly conference, Managing the Human Impact of Digital Transformation. And Thursday, April 14th, our topic will be how to elevate your social impact reporting to meet stakeholder expectations this year. Thanks to everyone from Day One. Stay well.